Hi there, I'm Brandon Dorer, brand marketing reporter at AdAge. Welcome to another edition of the Marketer's Brief podcast, our weekly discussion of marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. Like many other industries, digital payment services are still leveling out after a global surge during COVID. Swedish buy now, pay later company Klarna is relying on generative AI to cut costs, especially when it comes to image generation. It appears to be working, as it reported a 27% revenue increase in the first half of the year, turning a profit after operating in the red last year. In this episode, Chief Marketing Officer David Sandstrom told us how Klarna's marketing team is using generative AI these days, as the company relies on attrition and a hiring freeze to reduce headcount. He also dove into the company's recent campaign, featuring a big personality in Shaquille O'Neal, that promotes its new personal accounts and cashback offering that challenges traditional banks. Here's the chat with David. David Sandstrom, welcome to the Marketer's Brief podcast.
Thank you.
David, I want to start by talking about your background a little bit. I took a look at your LinkedIn and I saw that you've worked across a few different categories. Just to start, can you tell me a little bit about how you got to Klarna, how you got into financial services?
Yeah, of course. I mean, straight out of school, or I studied actually marketing and media. From the get-go, I was very interested in brands, how to influence people, marketing, why people would buy one thing over the seemingly same other thing, right? Why do people go for a Coke instead of a Pepsi? I was extremely interested in that and started my career as a strategist at a media agency where we actually analyze these things, right? Obviously, way before big data and AI, we did this manually. And I did that for a couple of years and I had a blast, a blast. After that, I transitioned into actually creating the work. So not only analyzing the work and talking about the work and thinking about the work, but I moved to DDB here in the Nordics. I'm in Stockholm. Pretty big and successful agency. I was there for, I think, 6 years, something like that. I was a I was a strategist during my first 2 years. And then in the last 4 years, I took over as a CEO. And we were really, really successful. I think we were voted the best independent agency in the world 2 times in a row. We did the fun theory. We won all sorts of things in Cannes. And at DDB, we started working with Klarna. And Klarna is, to many Swedes, at least when we started here, it's a known brand, but it wasn't really a brand. It was a known company, but not a brand, right? And that intrigued me on the marketing side and on the branding side. Started to work with Klarna and creating or setting the foundations for the new Klarna that we are today. And after having done that for half a year, Sebastian, the CEO, said, "Hey, do you want to hop on this adventure, right? Can't be a consultant your whole life. You do want to take accountability for the work that you do, be in charge of the work that you do, broaden your perspectives. Why don't you come to Klarna?" And that's pretty much it. Yeah, I've been here for more than 7 years now, and it's been a ride. Taken this company from being this interesting Nordic startup into it's cheesy to say that we're a global power brand within fintech, because we're probably not yet, but we've at least made a mark on the industry, both on the financial side, but also to some extent on the marketing and branding side. Like how do you approach marketing and branding in a new kind of way as a financial institution?
Right. And cheesier or not, you guys certainly are becoming more global. You've recently made some pretty big moves that are relevant to the US. Maybe we can start to talk about some of the work that you're doing. No longer a consultant, you're making this stuff. So maybe we can start to chat about some of that stuff that you're making. I know recently Klarna kind of made a move into, if you will, a little bit more of the traditional banking space, right? You guys launched personal accounts pretty recently, cashback rewards. And I know that you just launched a campaign basically promoting a lot of that stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about some of that work in the campaign?
I think we're obviously really excited about both of these products, like the Klarna Balance, as we call it, the ability to store money with Klarna. We haven't had that before, the ability to hold money with Klarna, which unlocks loads of benefits for consumers and for Klarna, right? And on top of that, the cashback offering that we have, which basically means that it's a quite simple offer. You get cashback when you shop in the Klarna app. It's a known concept, right? So nothing to explain. The campaign connected to that is a really fun one, in my opinion, right? We've teamed up with Shaquille O'Neal, who is not only an iconic sports star, but to some extent also an iconic businessman. He is known to do well in business, and he is known to understand good deals, right? And that is also the foundation of the campaign itself, right? We want to show people that we continue our path on offering good deals, offering good value. Cashback is almost our crown jewel in this ecosystem. And for this campaign, we've asked Shaquille O'Neal to be our deal announcer. And every time he announces a good deal with Klarna, he is known as Shaquille O'Deal instead. So it's a very simple idea as well, right? We've connected quite a lot of assets to that. We're going to run the campaign throughout the year. But at the core, it's a very simple idea, right? Shaquille O'Neal presents good deals at Klarna under the name of Shaquille O'Deal, right? And I'm personally a big fan of simple ideas. I think we have too few of those ideas. I think I've seen the trend in the last couple of years where brands expect too much of the consumer, of the listener. And I do think maybe it's a personal thing, but I'm a huge fan of not asking too much. Like very simple message. I don't want the consumers to burn too many calories when they see our stuff. They should immediately understand what we're on about. Shaquille O'Deal is a super simple yet likable way of saying, hey, you know what? There's loads of value to gain in the Klarna app.
Yeah, it does not get much more simple than just a slight little play on words with this last. Do you have any fun stories, I guess, from that came out of working with Shaq on this campaign?
I mean, he is a fun guy to work with, right? One thing, or a couple of things. I mean, he is obviously a big character, right?
Quite literally, yes,
In
in
many ways,
stature
big
and yeah,
character.
legend.
He is actually very big. I'd be happy to send you a couple of photos from him actually holding our art director up, and it looks like he's carrying a child, basically. But he is great to work with, a lot of fun, almost too much fun for us because he has a lot of personality. One thing that we need to do as a brand, as we grow, our responsibility grows. At the core, we need, or we are a trusted brand and need to continue to be a trusted brand. But I mean, we have hundreds of millions of consumers that trust us with their money. So trust is a huge thing. So although we want likable and easy ideas with some fun, I don't want them to be too much fun. But Shaq couldn't, stop himself from adding more character, more fun all the time. So he is the first celebrity that we've worked with who we actually have to tell, please tone it down a bit. We need to come across as slightly more buttoned up.
Right. People need to come away from this remembering Florida, not necessarily just Shaq being Shaq being funny and Shaq being
Exactly, but he has a ton of humor. He's fantastic to work with. We've had a blast, but many times we just had to tell him like tone it down a notch or two.
Did you guys have a target audience in mind for this? Obviously, I know that the new account and a lot of the cashback stuff is new to the U.S. Obviously, Shaq is a pretty big cultural icon here in the U.S. Was there a particular, I guess, demographic you had in mind for this? Obviously, Shaq has sort of cultural sway with a huge range of people in the U.S. But just curious if you guys had a particular group in mind for this campaign.
Exactly. I think that is to some extent at the core of the kind of partnerships we want to go after is someone who is relevant across generations, right? We obviously have a slightly stronger foothold when it comes to Gen Z and millennials, but both Paris, who obviously, spans across many, many generations. Shaq does as well. And that is an important thing because sometimes when people wrongly think about Klarna, they think about it's only for young people or it's only for digital nomads or things like that. But when you look at our demographic, like everyone buys stuff online and we are a big player for online purchases. So that is actually hard because there aren't that many partnerships that we can envision that actually span across that many generations and put a smile on my dad's face as well as myself, as well as kids who've heard about him and love basketball. So in many ways, he's a perfect partner for us. And then obviously the fun play on words with his last name obviously adds some character to the campaign.
Sure, makes total sense. Who were some of, I guess, the agency partners that you guys worked with on this? I know recently you guys have made a lot of news about how you've been able to save a lot using generative AI, both on the in-house side and in terms of like external agency work. Did you guys work with any agencies on this? And I guess what were some of the services that you relied
No,
on them for?
no.
This
This
is
is
all
one of the
in-house.
this is one of the campaigns. When we do more complex things, when there is more, I don't want to say there's more creativity involved, but sometimes you need to think way more in terms of ecosystems, platforms, concepts, things like that. We've worked with Sid Lee for our new Sign of Intelligence campaign that is also going to launch. But for this one, when we have these simple ideas, I have a lot of people here with agency background. We are, nowadays at least, we're equipped to run these projects in-house ourselves. And pros and cons with everything, right? But for us, the simple, straightforward, campaignish kind of start-end ideas, we try to do them internally as much as possible. But when we do bigger things where you have to think maybe over a 2-year time span, major differences in media mix and things like that, it's always good to have a partner connected to that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about generative AI a little bit more because obviously, a lot has been, I think, made in the headlines recently about how Klarna is able to consolidate a lot of its business thanks to generative AI, especially on the marketing side. Like I said earlier, both in-house and in terms of agency costs. I know in August, you guys just posted a profit for the first half of the year, no small part due to your ability to consolidate with generative AI. Curious, did AI play? I know it's a very simple campaign. Did it play any part in this campaign?
I actually don't think we have used any AI here in this campaign. We have, I mean, very much is centered around Shack and the product itself, and there wasn't a real need to go for AI here, right?
Gotcha.
Unless we're talking about, some AI applications and After Effects and stuff like that, but that is not really what we mean when we talk about AI in practice.
Gotcha.
So this is a fully human campaign, maybe a rarity going forward.
So let's actually get into that a little bit more. As you guys are continuing to rely on generative AI, what are some of the biggest, most common ways you're using it on the marketing team?
I mean, we use it in many ways, but I also think that we might have been slightly misinterpreted or misunderstood because we're actually not replacing anything. We're not doing anything new, or we're not replacing anyone, right? I just feel that we have been given an opportunity to supercharge our creatives and our account directors with superpowers, right? So they're way more efficient. They get rid of a lot of mundane work, a lot of repetitive, in many cases, boring work gets automated. Things that we historically have felt are a waste of money, right? So there are a lot of things like when it comes to baseline things, translations and things like that is something that we're now heavily reliant on AI for. We've spent loads of money on just translating text, which doesn't make sense to us. That's one thing. Ideation is another thing, having like a sparring partner to just bounce things off, getting started with things. We've recently used AI a lot to amplify or multiply ideas. So most of the ideas that we have, most of the concepts that we have are set by a human being, because I personally believe that although AI is fantastic and the output we see is amazing, that level of creativity that good humans can display, where they combine 100 different data points and influences and understand everything from cultural context to internal bureaucracy, an AI can't do that. But what an AI can do is amplify that. So once we have a concept, we're saying, hey, we have something we like. Can you give us 20 out of homes and 50 email sendouts? So we've automated a lot of that, right? So I would say mostly we've supercharged our creative department, and we've removed a lot of mundane tasks, which has enabled them to actually spend more time on real things. And then obviously like sketches and stuff like that. Like we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in the past on like just visualizing ideas, but those are never the real, they're just sketches, right? And their AI is a fantastic tool nowadays for that.
Do you have any specific examples with campaigns you've worked on recently where generative AI played a really big role in any of the ways you were just talking about?
Most of our smaller campaigns, so the retail campaigns, as we call them, so back to school, all of those things, right? Back to school is an important moment in time for us, but from a financial perspective, we can't make the math work to do a huge production around that, right? All the photography, celeb, everything needed to do something huge from these retail moments. We haven't had the finances for that. Like if we want to do something big for Christmas or big for cashback, like here, we still go into a production, right? But we have all these retail moments, like back to school, Mother's Day, all of them where it's like they are important, but I can't really spend any money. In all of them, they are almost fully, if not fully, AI produced here nowadays. Because I don't want to call this sustainability thinking, but I do think there is a lot of one and done in the advertising industry, right? Huge Mother's Day production. Mother's Day is obviously, as the name indicates, one day. You do that and then out the window, and then you go into the next and out the window. And I don't like, I think we have wasted historically a lot of money on producing things that haven't really resulted in a return on investment. So what I feel, I don't think that we're going to replace these big things that we do when we work with, Shaq, with Paris, when we do our holiday campaigns. I don't think, unless it's going to be some sort of PR thing, that we're going to see AI produced Super Bowl ads yet. Maybe as a PR thing, we're going to see that, but not as a serious thing. But what I think we're going to see the level, the ambition, the quality of the tier 2 and tier 3 campaigns go up significantly because of AI, basically, right? So I think that is where you're going to see the biggest difference. Our big campaigns are still going to be 100% human. Tier 2 and tier 3 campaigns, it's like, oh, we need to do a travel campaign before summer. That is going to look disproportionately fantastic due to the use of AI. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I'm curious, what are some of the use cases maybe you've identified for generative AI that are unique to the financial services industry? Do you feel like you guys, based off the category that you're in, have any particular use cases for generative AI that maybe other categories don't, or it's just a little bit more obvious to use generative AI as a financial services company?
I'm not sure if it's totally unique, but I mean, we sit at the intersection of financial services and e-commerce, right? And the holy grail of e-commerce is personalization, right? You don't like what I like, what someone else is like. We're all unique. The brands I like are slightly different from the brands my wife likes. So the more personalized you can get, the more relevant you will be. And relevancy obviously leads to clicks and sales, right? So probably more than other industries, although everyone suffers from this, but more than any other industry, I think that we're in need of highly personalized communication. What AI can do, due to the fact that it's very quick, very cost effective, is to help us create things that look fantastic, but on a one-to-one basis, right? 5 years ago, if I were to produce a campaign that's specific for you, one specific for me, one specific for every single customer, that would have been impossible. But nowadays, with the help of AI and with the help of the data that we sit on as a financial institution, meaning that we understand what you like, what you purchase, what brands you visit often, the level of personalization that we have started to apply and that we're going to see way more going into next year is mind-blowing, in my opinion.
That is interesting. That is interesting. I want to ask because I saw some headlines and even some corrections floating around because Klarna has talked a lot about its ability to consolidate and reduce the amount of employees it has to employ. And like I said, I saw a few corrections that these are not layoffs, right? This is natural attrition.
Exactly.
What is the size of the marketing team right now? How big are you guys?
We don't have real we're structured so differently so that we don't have that. But let's say that we close to 100.
Close to 100. Okay. Do you have
Close to 100. That is my guess. I should know, but we don't have a marketing. But if we would have a marketing department, I would obviously be on top of that. But we have marketeers spread out across the organization, and we're not structured like a traditional company. But I would say around 100 people contribute to what we do here.
100 marketers in various departments across the
country. And I think I obviously also read the headlines, right? And I think to some extent, Sebastian, our CEO, who is quoted on this, is slightly misrepresented by media, right? And I also appreciate media is in they need the clicks, right? And some headlines sound juicier than others, right? But I think the honest truth here is that we have become 10x as efficient as we were 2 years ago, which means that we don't need to hire or replace people who choose to leave Klarna to the same extent as before, right? Again, as I said, we don't have, it's also good to bear in mind, at least on the marketing side, we don't have a single AI process in place or workflow in place that replaces human beings. It just makes human beings way more efficient and removes all the tedious stuff from their workload, right? So they're more efficient, which means that over time, we won't have to hire as many people. And the natural attrition of Klarna is between 15 and 20% per year. And yeah, that will obviously show in how the workforce is structured going forward. But we're not talking about layoffs here due to AI. I also don't believe that AI is mature enough yet to cause layoffs.
What is your ideal team size? I know it's not like a marketing department necessarily, but what do you feel like this is the perfect amount of marketing experts to have and to be working with?
I mean, our teams, we're structured in teams. Our teams are, all of the teams are between 6 and 8 people. All the teams have a very, very clear problem space. I think once you move beyond 8 people, you face a different set of problems, like with alignment, with internal communications, with the inability to make decisions and move fast. So for all of the tasks or projects or campaigns that we have teams between 6 to 8 people that manage them. Then again, we have loads of projects in parallel, which means that we are 100, like around 100 people working with marketing. But that is just due to the sheer size and number of projects, right? Cashback being one of them, but we have holiday coming up. We've launched a Klarna card. We have the balance. We're live in 22 markets or something like that. So there's loads going on, right? But I'm still a big believer of this. It's cheesy to say the 2 pizza team, but that kind of thinking that the team shouldn't be bigger than, than being able to share 2 pizzas for dinner.
Gotcha. The last question I wanted to ask you about is how do you get, your team and the marketing department excited about using generative AI? Like, what is your process for getting them on board and making it a habitual part of what they do?
I think like one good thing is that most people here at Klarna are really, really smart. So when they run into something and start using it themselves and start realizing what it can do, I think they're smart enough to adopt it. So rather than me telling everyone, hey, we need to do this, we need to do that, people have actually been curious enough to start adopting this and realizing themselves the power of this, right? The only thing I have done and been slightly unfair with is to raise the expectations of outputs to make it almost impossible to not use AI. So I would tell a team, hey guys, I want to see 100 headlines tomorrow, right? So either they work like through the night or they work smarter, or saying, hey, I want to see 10 mock-ups or sketches of this campaign, but you don't have any budget, right? So either they learn how to draw or they learn how to AI. That's basically what they can do. But we're doing that in a friendly way, right? But I do think setting the bar extremely high for the output and then having the team starting to learn themselves. But also, I want to be honest with the fact that I do think Klarna it's been almost, self-segmenting here, right? The culture here at Klarna currently is move extremely fast, adopt AI as much as you can, not recklessly, obviously, right? But like that is the culture here internally. And if you don't like that, I don't think this is a great place to work right now. And we've seen that, and that is to some extent also contributing to some of the churn that we've seen. But we haven't forced anyone. I think it's been a fairly smooth ride with getting the adoption up to, I think we have an adoption of over 90% here at Klarna.
I think this is probably a topic we could do an entire separate, much longer podcast on.
Exactly. And if I could show you stuff, I would show you some of the workflows, how we actually go from having nothing to having an idea to having output and then to A/B testing it in the market. But you would also see that, like, again, we haven't come up with anything new based on AI. We've just taken what we did 2 years ago and made it much faster, much smarter, much better for the people who actually operate those workflows.
All right, maybe we'll have to do a part 2 at some point. Get some visual components to this podcast go with it, so we can work on some of that. But for now, I know we're just about at time. So David, I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the Marketing Brief podcast.
Thanks for having me.
That was David Sandstrom, Chief Marketing Officer at Klarna. I'm Brandon Dorr, Brand Marketing Reporter at AdAge. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Chiardio, and invite you to subscribe to Marketer's Brief wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.